What's going on, guys? KevDog, how you doing? Everyone,
Hey,
welcome to Fight Night, presented by Knights of D-Gen, KOD Media. We are here to recap UFC Vegas 54 from this past Saturday. KevDog, how you doing today?
man, living the dream. Happy and healthy. Can't ask for much else. We had quite the unfortunate events here this past weekend, but man, I think it was a banger all around. I mean, we saw 6 finishes on this past card. Lots of exciting finishes, lots of exciting upsets, and super excited to hop into it.
Yeah, I mean, we basically hit it on the head last week. We said there's going to be a lot of finishes on this card. Back at the Apex, you know that the finish percentage goes way up there opposed to pay-per-view cards just because of smaller octagon. But yeah, I mean, really entertaining card. I don't know if we can say the same about this upcoming week that we're about to see, but as long as we focus on this past week here, I think we keep the excitement rolling a little bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. There's a few hidden gems on this card upcoming, but like you said, on paper, man, it might be one of the worst cards we've ever seen. I mean, and that's no knock on the entertainment side of it, right? I mean, there's no doubt that we're going to see a lot of bangers and a lot of knockouts, submissions. So even though we're not seeing all that talent, you already know that these guys are going to bring it.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I know you mentioned that you're happy, you're healthy, but that kind of leads us into our first segment of the night, the bad beat of the night. I know we mentioned it on last week's show, what was going on here. I mean, I guess we'll just get right into the betting here. We'll queue up that betting segment. We'll get right into it.
Yeah, man. So, of course, the bad beat, right? It's got to be the Rockets. But, in hindsight, I haven't rewatched the fight, but, just looking back at the fight, Jan was bringing it, man. I think that Jan outperformed himself to that point. It didn't seem like that injury was really affecting him much. And, quite frankly, he was compromising that front leg, those first 2 rounds quite significantly. So, although he took, Rakic took that wrong step probably towards ACL. I mean, you've got to think about all those kicks that were being landed by Jan that may have led, to that point.
Yeah, and funny enough, Alexander Rakic afterwards posted to his Instagram. I'm not sure if you saw it or not, but he said that he had the injury sustained 3 weeks ago. No one knew anything about it. I mean, I thought for sure I would have gotten the inside scoop on that if we knew that he got injured 3 weeks prior. And it's funny because leading into this fight, we were both talking about Jan's injury, right? That he sustained with his neck. We thought that was going to be the difference maker in this fight. And ultimately, it was the other side, the side that we were on, that sustained the injury. And it's funny you say that Jan looked good because he took first round on all 3 judges' scorecards, right? And he was implementing his game plan early. Second round, I saw the Rakic I was expecting. He took the fight to the mat. We thought that he'd mix it up a little bit there. He got, I think, like 3+ minutes of control time on the floor too. So, he was out to a good start. Jan obviously was going to look best in the first round. And then due to his age and other circumstances, he'd start withering away. We saw a little bit of that. And then sure enough, round 3 comes along and, one false step.
Yeah, man. And I mean, if you look at the statistics, with all the strikes that Jan was landing, 45% of those were to the leg. And, we've seen over these last few years how significant, that calf kick can be. It's a strike that's, evolved significantly, and it has such an impact, right? Especially for one that has that diverse amount of striking in their, in their hands and their feet, where, they're not really able to set those feet and, ultimately, have that, full, footwork to the tee. So it was definitely compromised. I also feel like Rakic wasn't really doing a good job, like staying as agile as we've seen in the past. I don't know. It seemed like he was kind of putting himself in that, uncomfortable environment where we saw in the first round, he was just getting lit up for the most part. So, hats off to Jan. He deserves the win, even though it was an unfortunate event. He was in that fight. So, although it was technically a bad beat with us being on that Rakic side, much respect to Mr. Jan Blachowicz.
Yeah, and that movement you're talking about that we're so used to seeing from Alexander Rakic, it was limited there, and you have to think it had to do with the injury that ultimately led to the finale of the fight here. And it's just unfortunate, and it's one of those things that it's why we love the sport, right? Because there's such high variance here. You could love a side so much. Every single facet could point to why you should back this side. And then he takes one bad step, and then, the night's over, TKO for Jan. And, like I said, it's just unfortunate for us being Rakic backers there. I know you had a decent amount on Rakic. I had a decent amount on Rakic. I asked if I should hedge out on Rakic on the last leg of the parlay. I wisely did.
Yes.
I took Jan. So what I did was I took Jan by TKO KO plus 450, right? And once he went down, I was like, I hope they ruled that a TKO, right? Like not some sort of like no contest, DQ,
Right.
like for whatever reason. So, I personally lucked out from that. So I was just lucky to take that side. But, the leg kicks too, they are very effective. They're one of the most effective strikes in the sport, and especially at this weight class, right? Light heavyweight, you got people on fight night, they're both probably 220 plus. And how do you chop a tree down? You start at the bottom, right? So makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. And again, it's one of those strikes that you really didn't see much, 5-10 years ago. I mean, it was there, but it seems like now almost 80% of fighters are incorporating that into their strategy, which which has been so efficient. So, on the flip coin though, I mean, you definitely hit some bangers this week. As a matter of fact, it twisted in a DFS play that, man, hit the wheels off. But yeah, if we look at those, boom, there she is. So tell us a little bit about that, Prod. I mean, that's a massive hit. A lot of people see first of 277, but in reality, that's tough. That's tough to do.
And, as much of a bad beat it was for us on Rakic, that was actually my blessing for this contest because I faded the main event, right? So going into this last fight, I needed Jan to have under 69 points. I needed Rakic to have under 98. And so the way the scoring works for those that are unaware, for a first round finish, you get 90 points. For a second round finish, you get 70 points. For a third round finish, it drops down to 45. And then fourth and fifth round are both 40 point for finish. So, a knockdown. Now listen to this. This is where it gets a little crazy. A knockdown is worth 10 points. So I just want to let you know, Jan finished with 61.5 points or something like that. So if Rakic got knocked down there and knocked out, I would have lost. But the fact that he stepped back and tore his knee and he fell on his own willpower, there was no 10 points awarded to Jan.
Wow. So
I wound up getting the winner here.
Wow. And, when it comes to DFS, it's kind of like poker. Like there's a sense of luck there, but generally speaking, it definitely takes quite a bit of knowledge to hammer this. And I mean, in order to, come in this place, I mean, you've got to hit every pick as a win, no matter what.
Absolutely.
And then you also have to rely on the other fighters not to have any early knockouts. So,
yeah, of course. And it's funny because I was inspired by our guest on the Twitter Spaces on Saturday, Brian Jester of he has his own fantasy company. He does a lot of DFS. Just 2 weeks ago on the Oliveira fight, he cashed 200 grand in a contest, right? It makes my 5 grand look a little minuscule, but I'm still happy with what I got, right?
Yeah,
and
man,
it's funny because we weren't even able to pick his brain much, right? Because he had audio troubles. It was going in and out. But, I got just a little bit of what I needed, right? I just kind of reaffirmed my beliefs because, by trait, I'm a DFS player. I play, religiously during the NFL season. I've been taking a step back lately with the UFC. And it's funny because once we got him on as a guest, I listened to one of his videos that he did with some other guy, Blenderhead, and it reminded me of like, why am I not doing DFS? It's like, it's my bread and butter. UFC, I spend all this time and energy, going in. I have the upper hand on everyone, right? Because I spend 10 plus hours a week looking at the card. Yeah. And just what he said, he was like, he liked Nascimento, right? He said he liked that play. And I already had that one in my mind. So I was like, I'm putting him in the lineup. And then I was like, I like that you have to put in a women's fight too. And that's what he said as well. He said, you have to put in a women's fight because a lot of people fade those. So just those two things I got from him out of our Twitter space in like the 17 seconds he was on, it kind of reaffirmed where I was going with this lineup. So I lucked out. I put this lineup in probably 10 minutes before the contest closed too. So not much time spent on us. I really lucked out here.
Yeah, no, he had that tidbit where he was talking about those women fighters, and you can really find that edge. And if I'm not mistaken, in your lineup you did have Viana Jandiroba, correct? So
I did.
That's huge. And I don't know if he was in the middle of the boondock somewhere or somehow, but we got about 17 seconds out of him. But hey, it led you to getting that first place dub. So yeah, it worked out for the better. Now, there were also a few other big plus money payouts that went down this weekend. You had 2 big ones. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Of course, we had the Ryan Span by KO or sub at plus 350, and then the Amanda Ribas. There's the DFS lineup here. Boom.
So you can see right there in line with the Span pick, he got me 91.92 points because of his first round finish. So I was pretty confident on the side there at plus 350. So took that, right? So I had to put him in the lineup. 15% owned in an 11 fight slate is very, very low. And One of the big things about DFS, for those that don't know, you have to find ways to get different and get ahead of the field. So in this specific contest, 61% of the field was on Iwan Kudalaba, right? So me getting Span with the early finish and all those people getting like 3 points out of Kudalaba, it just propelled me so much higher in this lineup. So, it's awesome that we got that graphic up there of my fighters. You see Davey Grant, 3rd round knockout. Nascimento won by decision and had a lot of control time, so he racked up points there. Jandiroba decision. Manuel Torres, 1st round finish, which we loved. And then you have Tetsuro Taira there, 96 points. He a lot of control time in that fight and a decision victory. So lucked out. And it just goes hand in hand with that 1+ money payout with Ryan Spann there at plus 350.
Yeah, you had that Ryan Spann, and then you also had that split decision call with Chookagian and Ribas. And to tail back on that Ryan Spann pick, man, in hindsight, I'm looking at his topology, earlier today, and 17 of his 20 wins are inside the distance, and you got a number at plus 350 by KO sub. I mean, props to you, man, because that was a very solid pick. And, Kudalaba has shown to, kind of put himself in that vulnerable position. So with the athleticism that Spann brings, man, he got taken down 3 times in the first, but somehow was able to, execute the submission.
Yeah, and you have to imagine that he got humbled in that last fight with Anthony Smith, right? He got finished in the first round himself. He got dominated pretty much the entire fight. And, once again, I got lucky because Iwan Kudalaba slipped going in for a takedown, and that's when Spann jumped on his neck. So that's big. And I know you touched upon this split decision I had as well at plus 400. And, it's back-to-back weeks now, right? We talked last week about how many split decisions there were. Partially we blamed it on the Arizona Athletic Commission there. But this week, you just have a feeling. You have someone who's trying to implement takedowns and Amanda Hebas, and then you have someone, Katlyn Chookagian, who is just, point fighter striking away. Whether you want to agree or disagree with where that decision went on it going to Katlyn Chookagian, doesn't make a difference because I just had it being by split, and that's all I really needed.
Yeah, all you really need is that one judge, right? And if you look at the numbers, man, they're so incredibly close. Round 3, I think Ribas, that was probably the only definitive round where Ribas most definitely won that round, outstruck her, had the control time, had the takedown. Where then you look at round 1 and 2, it was really interesting on how you judge that because, in the first round, Chookagian outstruck Ribas by, I think, 13 strikes. In the second round, she outstruck Ribas by 9 strikes. But then if you look at that takedown, right, Ribas had a takedown in each of those 2 rounds, with 2 minutes of control time. So it's like, how do you differentiate what is more significant there? If it went to Ribas, I wouldn't have hated the line, if it went to Chookagian, which it did, fortunately went in our favor. But, I don't think this was a robbery by any means. I don't think, you could definitely, find a way to score that for Ribas there.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, either way, but, when it comes down to judging these rounds, number one, it comes down to effective striking, right? So Ribas did have the control time, but when they were really trading, Chookagian got the better of all those exchanges for the most part. So, lucky to get that one there. And then our other plus money payout that we both had was also a consensus pick of the week, and that was Ilan Nascimento beating Jake Hadley, the big favorite off the Dana White Contender Series. We both got him at plus 185 there.
Yeah, this was, I think, a really good play looking back at it, especially with Nascimento coming out of that Dubronx, corner. You see Charles right there helping him out, giving him advice between rounds. I mean, I don't think that is so incredibly valuable to have someone like that in your corner, giving you that advice, with the dyed blonde hair, that whole that spiritual thing, right? So, and then you had a guy, and his opponent, making his UFC debut, hasn't really seen the bright lights in Hadley, and Nascimento got a feel for what it's like to be in the UFC. So you're kind of seeing a trend where you have these fighters either coming out of the Dana White Contender Series or making their debut versus a fighter who either won or lost in their first fight. That first fight is so darn significant. I mean, if you just look at last week, you had the CJ Vergara, Clades, and Rodriguez fight where Rodriguez making his debut. Although Vergara lost his first fight, he came in, wanting to rebound. And I think that's what we ultimately saw here in Nascimento, So props off to Nascimento getting the job done at plus 185. And, it's interesting what we'll see next one.
Yeah, I mean, great performance out of him. He really didn't put himself into much danger. You and I both thought there was a chance for a submission there in the fight. He did throw up a few attempts himself, but he was just content riding it out to a decision. So plus 185, it was kind of foolish not to take it, In hindsight, it always looks a little bit better. It looks a little bit more obvious, but I'm just happy we both had that, and that leads us into our consensus plays. 1-1 on the week. We kind of touched on both already. We both had Alexander Rakic at -185, and then we had Alan Nascimento at +185. So those really just cancel each other out there.
Yeah, no, we're 3-3, total with our consensus pick. So, we're riding that 500 line. I'm really looking forward to, this week getting us over that hump and putting us in the winning column, and keeping us there. Right. So I did want to note, though, out of those 6 consensus picks, 4 of those are at plus money. So, I think that's still pretty decent. I think generally speaking, probably have maybe a hair over in plus units there with those consensus picks. So, definitely looking to improve that number. Of course, this is only the second week of us getting rock and rolling, but I'm fully confident that we'll be able to get over that hump and stay in the plus money.
Yeah, I mean 3-3 for us. Recently it's kind of a bad job. Through going 3-3, and it's funny because it's almost like there's a trend with us. If we're both on the same side and it's at plus money, it seems to have been working out really well for us if we want to toot our own horns. But yeah, a little bit upset with 3-3, but again, if you're cashing those plus money sides in the process, can't be too upset about it. So yeah, if you want to jump into a full recap of the last card, let's go right into it, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about that Jan Rakic fight. Get back into it a little bit. I do want to talk a little bit more about Jan Blachowicz here and what this win means for him in his career at 39 years old. Basically a title eliminator fight. And right before they went out, Glover Teixeira, the champion of the light heavyweights, tweeted out himself, Jan, I'm rooting for you. Get this win, and then we'll rematch the title once I win in June.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because when I saw that tweet, I had to let you know, because I'll be honest, I did not have a good feeling about that. Seeing that tweet, and Glover wants that rematch. But hey, he's got a big step ahead of him, taking over Iri Prohaska. But like I said, man, hats off to Jan. He definitively took round 1, and it's funny because we were in the spaces on Saturday, and I was like, maybe a prediction 49-46, something around that.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, how in the world is Jan going to win a round? And we were like, well, maybe he's just going to drop Rakic or something. But hey, he definitively won round 1.
Yeah.
I mean, he dominated, and Rakic really wasn't showing that agility. I think I don't know. It seemed like there was a little bit of jitters there, and tailing back to that injury, it could be something that was predisposed before the fight. So, again, hats off to Jan. Rakic will be back. He has the talent, he has a skill to, to come back and make some noise. But, it just puts him a few steps back, and, we'll probably won't see him this year if it's an ACL injury.
Yeah, that's going to be to come back from, right? And especially in the position he was in. Now he's going to be in a position he'd have to fight down. There's the fight with Anthony Smith coming up against Magomed Ankalaev, right? So the winner of that one's going to be a good target for Alexander Rakic. But then again, who knows what they want to do with that division, if they want to keep it moving, because it kind of is a weird dilemma right now where the division is taken over by a lot of older guys, right? You have Teixeira, who's the champ at 42. You got Jan is now #1 contender at 39. Anthony Smith is just revitalized. It's like the young him again. He's going out there. He's beating all these young guys. So that fight's going to have big implications, because you never know if the winner of that fight's going to get the title shot, or they might get Jan for another eliminator, or if they wait for that winner to get Rakic. It's interesting, right?
Yeah, it is interesting. With the Ankalaev and Anthony Smith fight going down here in July, it's hard to see if that'll be a title eliminator, because like both guys, are just kind of in the mix. There's no I just don't think it's like a definitive, title eliminator there. Honestly, I think both guys will probably need one more fight after that fight there. And then there's another matchup going down in August, Jamal Hill versus Thiago Santos.
Yeah.
Both guys, Jamal Hill ranked 10, Thiago Santos ranked 6, with Rakic ranked like 4 or 3 in that mix. So, that's another fight where the winner could definitely see Rakic sometime in 2023. Of course, Magomed Ankalaev, we know what he's about. He's just such a great prospect in that division. So just one of those things, whether the UFC wants to kind of yoke up that talent, until we give him the big shot, or, give him one more challenge. The fight with Anthony Smith is really interesting. I mean, it's definitely no easy path. And, by all means, Anthony Smith will be ready to capitalize if Ankalaev makes any mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of segues us into the next fight we're going to talk about, which is that Iwan Kudalaba versus Ryan Spann fight, because Ryan Spann was in the top 10 before this last fight, lost to Anthony Smith this last time out. Iwan Kudalaba has 2 losses on his record against Magomed Ankalaev, right? So you have to imagine this Span win kind of propels him back into that top 10. You don't really know what to do with him now here either, right? Because he's beaten some, mid-tier guys, top 10, top 15 guys. And then he's fallen short against the top 10 and top 5 himself as well, like Anthony Smith fight. So it's going to be interesting to see what goes on here. But, Ryan Span looked phenomenal his last time out. Like I mentioned earlier, it could have been getting served like some humble pie his last time out, right? And we really saw, I feel like the best form of Ryan Span the other day.
Yeah, no, I mean, he faced some tremendous adversity there in round 1, getting taken down 3 times, and it seemed like Kudalaba was just controlling him everywhere. It didn't seem like, Mr. Span was landing too much, and, Kudalaba made a mistake, slipped, and Ryan Span took advantage. So, big hats off to Ryan. A lot of fighters these days, they get taken down 3 times in the first round. You don't expect them to come out here and submit them in that same round. So, Span just put on a phenomenal performance. And like you said, we saw the best version of him. And, really interesting to see what you do next with this guy, right? Because he's not like on a massive win streak, right? But he just made a dominant statement performance here that he belongs in the top 15. And there's a fighter who I think, is similar in a sense, and it would be a really fun fight. Now, this fighter does already have something planned, that being Paul Craig. He's got a fight versus Volkan Ozdemir here in a few months. And, of course, we know what Paul Craig is about. He loves that submission game. And you look at a guy like Ryan Span. I mean, he's a submission artist. He's got, 12 or 13 submissions on his resume. So that's a really interesting fight because, with Paul Craig being kind of already in the top 10 there, who knows if they'd be willing to give Ryan Span that type of test. But it just poses a really intriguing matchup just because both guys have that massive submission arsenal in their game.
Yeah, absolutely. And then even like the fight you mentioned before, if Jamal Hill comes out of that fight the winner, that fight kind of makes a little bit of sense putting him against Ryan Span,
Yeah, man. Jamal Hill is super exciting. And I know a lot of guys pretty high on this man. If he can just kind of, round out some of his skills that, are not, not at the top of his, he has a lot of potential, man, Jamal Hill. I don't want to get too much on a tangent, but, that matchup with Span definitely would cause some noise. And, on the Kudalaba side, this is not a good, this is not a good fight for a man. I mean, he's definitely taken a few steps back here. We've seen him on a few loss, skid in the UFC, and he's just shown to put himself in such vulnerable situations. It seems like he's got the grappling, he's got, the strength, but he just doesn't have the IQ, and I think that goes such a long way in the UFC, and I mean, I have Michał Olejniczak. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right. I think I got it. The Polishman in that division. He's ranked, he's ranked somewhere around, the Kudalaba side, and around the top 20-ish. But I mean, and then you also have a guy like Ovince St. Preux, who is all the way up there in age. And it's like, he probably has a few fights left, but I think giving Kudalaba, a seasoned veteran in OSP, will test him and be like, all right, do you really belong here versus this type of talent? So, it's just really unfortunate for Kudalaba, and he's not on any trend to go towards the top 10 anytime soon.
No, and if I'm not mistaken, I think that may have been his 3rd loss in his last 4 fights, right? With the 1 win coming over Devin Clark, who he's up there in age. He's not really ever been towards the top of that weight class. So it's interesting to see what they do with him, because who knows, some of his antics that he's had pre-fight, in his history with shoving people and injuring them before fights. Mm-hmm. Who knows, if he loses another 1-2, we might see him in the PFL.
Yeah, man. I mean, unless he paints his face green for his next weigh, and I think that's his last sense of hope, because he is the Hawk. That is his technical nickname, even though he doesn't perform like that in any way, shape, or form. But he has that tendency of painting his face green, for the weigh-ins, and he didn't do it for this weigh-in. We saw him get choked down the first, so
you have to go back to it, right?
You probably should have painted that face, Matt. What do you think?
I think you're right, but I don't want to spend too much time, bashing the guy. It is a tough sport. I want to highlight some of the good performances we saw this past week. I want to start off with the first fight of the night, the biggest upset on the entire card. We had Andre Petrovsky getting a first-round submission of his own against the highly touted prospect Nick Maximov, which, I had Maximov in a parlay with Rakic. It turned out not really meaning too much, right, since they both went down. But Yeah, that was surprising, man. I did not see Maximov getting himself into that compromising situation so early, right? And then Petrovsky really, he is the better grappler of the two. When it comes to jiu-jitsu, he was the better one. That was my only concern in this matchup. But I just, from what I saw to Maximov coming into this, I didn't see him putting himself into that situation, especially not as early as it came.
Yeah, Petrovsky, man, he came in just looking so incredibly confident. And, you look at that weigh-in, of course, he's rocking the headband. Never can bet against a guy with the headband
Absolutely.
on. So, man, it was just one of those things where he just came out and was ready to perform. This is his third fight in the UFC, if I'm not mistaken. And all three of those are finishes,
Yeah.
And I know you mentioned this on the spaces, those two guys that he did finish, obviously were tomato cans, but at the end of the day, it's two finishes in the UFC, and to make that three, that really puts him on the map. I mean, my goodness, versus a guy in Maximov, who a lot of guys, sensed as, a massive prospect in the division, which
we're asking about Hamza Chimaev before the fight.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
I mean, that is ridiculous. I mean, how embarrassing to call out a name like that just to get dominated as a 3-1, favorite. So, man, hats off to Petrovsky, man. I mean, he just came in well prepared. He had a game plan and he executed to the T.
That he did. He did a great job of it. And then the next fight after that, we have to highlight Tatsuro Taira out of Japan, 22 years old. He looked amazing. His striking looked good. His grappling was amazing. His transitions were just chef's kiss. It was I loved it. I loved watching every second of that fight. And, honestly, I'm happy we saw it go to decision because now we get more tape on him, right?
Yeah.
And that was the one knock on him coming into this fight. We didn't have much tape on him, especially not against UFC level, competition. So getting these full 3 rounds, seeing how he did, he faced some adversity early on, right? He got clipped with a few shots on the feet, and then he got into some compromising situations on the ground too. So we saw how he fought against that. That body lock was just amazing. I want to hear your thoughts because I know you're pretty high on him.
It was just harmony in motion. I mean, we saw the tape on the regional scene and, he's just so young, right? I mean, he's only 22 years old. So a lot of these fights, he was 21, 20, even 19 years old. And, man, he just looked so crisp, man. Like, he just looked flawless. Like, he wasn't really making any mistakes, in those scrambles. I mean, like you said it best, those transitions were just out of this world. I mean, it's easy to just like watch that and see him move around the fighter. But, from a technical standpoint, I mean, that's not easy to do, to react so quickly like he did. And, just a flawless performance. Of course, he couldn't, put Candelaria away, but, Candelaria is, even though he is not the best fighter, he's a tough dude. And, it was just flawless. I mean, a judge scored at 30-26. So, hats off to Tatsuro. It's just one of those things where, he's 22 years old in 2022. It's really intriguing to see where he's going to go these next few years because, we haven't really seen a true Japanese prospect, to I guess to this extent in some time, if ever. So he's so young. Hopefully he doesn't pull off a Sage Northcutt, if you know what I mean. Like, young guy coming into the UFC and then just like crap the bed. So, but I don't think we're going to see that here. Tatsuro Taira, he was born for this, and
he really was.
Yeah, he was born for this, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what's next for him.
And you got to love seeing him bust out the English too in the post-fight interview, right? He had.
Oh my gosh!
I said this in the Discord in the Knights of Degen, right? I said that is such an alpha move, bringing a pre-written victory post-fight speech in English already transcribed, right? From just go read it off. That was amazing. I love to see it. He's taking steps to make himself marketable too at the US. So, the sky really is the limit for that kid. You can't really say that about many of these young fighters coming in, right? But after a performance like that and, seeing everything outside of the cage too, I'm very high on this kid.
Yeah, very, very high on him. I think, his ground game is just to the T, just beautiful. I think if he can just round out that striking, I think that could use a little bit of improvements, kind of putting out a little bit more volume and, following up on those jabs and those combinations. Man, he's going to be fun to watch. And like I said, he's just so incredibly young. He's got so much time to grow. It'll be interesting if they're willing to give him the Patty Pimblett special and just give him a bunch of tomato cans, or, if they're willing to give him. Yeah, or Sean O'Malley, man. And he's got a fight next month versus somebody. I'm drawing a blank who it is, but
Sean O'Malley is fighting Pedro Munoz.
So I mean, it's a step up in competition, but up to that point, he had no business facing trash cans that he did. So yeah, super exciting stuff, and it's going to be awesome to see him just evolve in the UFC.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it's funny because now we're going to jump at the complete opposite side of the spectrum here with a great performance from Michael Johnson, right? This is someone in a completely opposite type of situation, right? He's older. He's coming off a 1.5 to 2 year layoff. We haven't really seen him. And he looked crisp. He looked real crisp on the feet. His hand speed is fast.
It's so fast. And, you know, the guys that he's faced in the UFC, the guys that he's beaten in the UFC, you know, he beat our boy Tony Ferg, you know, so and he's beaten a few other veterans in the UFC, man. And, you know, mind you, he may have a 19-18 record and 19-17 record, whatever it was. Man, he just came out and showed that he's the veteran and just completely outworked Alan Patrice, you know, and it was a vicious knockout. I was deep down a little bit disappointed he didn't get a bonus for that. I thought it was very much so well deserving to put a guy out cold like that. And, you know, he still has a job, right? He still has a job.
Yeah. And you know what? I feel like Michael Johnson's one of those guys where, you know, you hear this term tossed around a little bit. He's a fighter's fighter, right? So like your favorite fighter loves watching him fight because he's just so game. Even in the post-fight interview, they're trying to get him to call someone out. He was just like, just give me a fight, man. You know,
Yeah.
I would have loved to see him call out Dustin Poirier, right? You know, just take a stab in the dark and try to get that one last payday, you know, and give Dustin a chance of redemption there for the knockout he sustained, you know, from Michael Johnson. But, you know, I guess we'll see what they do with him now. It's going to be I can't even guess where they go with him.
Yeah. I mean, you know, he's just been in the UFC so long. He's at that age where obviously he's, you know, not going to contend for a belt anytime soon. It's like, you know, kind of like a Jim Miller, right? Like he's on this, you know,
don't tell him that.
Yeah, right. You know, he's on like this, you know, Jim Miller and a few win streak here, and you know, he's not gonna, you know, climb the rankings or try to contend for a belt anytime soon. But you know, Johnson is just entertaining. So you know, I guess throw him in versus a guy and hopefully see him put on another knockout.
Yeah, for sure. And then one last guy we have to highlight here was Davey Grant. You know, had an amazing first round. He got beat up in that second round. You know, I thought for a second that we were in a little bit of trouble there with Davey Grant. And, you know, he came back in that third round. He looked like a brand new fighter. He was refreshed from that intermission, and he came out swinging. He caught Smolka with a nice right hand and just took him out of there.
Put him to sleep. Yeah, no, this was a really, really good fight because Davey Grant just dominated that first round. You know, Smolka showed tremendous adversity in that second coming back. I did have a unit on Smolka, so going into the third round, I was feeling good about it, you know, even though we lost that bet. It's just one of those things where you get a guy at, you know, plus 235 in that position going into the third round, you know, you take your chances, right? So before that knockout, I mean, it was semi-competitive, right? I mean, there was definitely a chance, but ultimately, you know, Davey Grant found the mark and put Smolka out cold.
Yeah, and I didn't check the scorecards, but I have to imagine all three had Smolka in round two because I had that one parlay that I kept sending in the Discord where the last two legs were Davey Grant and then Rakic. I had Davey Grant as well in my DFS lineup, which came through. But going into that third round, I had to check the live odds, right? Because I was looking, I was like, I don't know how Davey Grant's going to respond here because he was really getting pieced up in that second round by Smolka. Smolka looked the best he's looked in years, right? And I'm looking. It was minus 110 on both sides. And I was so tempted. I was like, am I about to hedge this out a little bit with Smolka? I was like, I don't really know. I was like, let me just see it ride. And then like a minute, 2 minutes in, he got that knockout victory. So unfortunate for you. I'm sorry about that. It did help me out selfishly. So I was very happy with the result there. And yeah, it was just a great fight. Davey Grant, another guy up there, 36 years old. Not sure what they do with him next, but, you know, exciting guy to watch fight.
Yeah, I mean, he's 36 years old, but he certainly doesn't fight like it. I mean, the fact that he, you know, faced that adversity and dominated the third round the way he did, you know, he's still got some juice left in him. So, you know, a lot of these fighters, you know, they just tend to hit that prime, you know, in that mid to late 30s. And we could see that in Davey Grant. I mean, there's no doubt this guy, you said it best, man. He hits like a truck. I mean, he's just so powerful and he's just so agile the way he moves. And, you know, I think he's definitely worthy of a top 15 opponent here. You know, Smolka is no easy task by any means. I mean, you know, he's been a little streaky, but you know, he almost beat him and has lots of talent back behind that. So we'll see what they do with Davey Grant, but I would imagine that they'll throw him your top 15 opponent.
Hey, you know, there's always room for that Cheeto Vera, you know, rematch. It'll be their third fight, the trilogy. They're split one apiece there. So you know, I think if Cheeto, say he loses his next fight, whoever they give him next, that fight makes a little bit of sense down the line, right?
It does. And who wouldn't want to see that again? I mean, both guys are just super electric. So, definitely props off to Davey Grant for getting the job done. And, looking forward to this card ahead of us, man. I mean, we've got an absolute banger, somewhat, sort of, not really, but we'll see some bangers for sure on this next card.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, fighting's fighting, right? We'll tune in just because there's the off chance of something awesome happening. And speaking about older fighters coming in, we have a main event with Holly Holm, right? That's a UFC vet, has beaten the best of the best, and she's main eventing this one, her first fight back in 2 years against Ketlen Vieira. And it's interesting that I think she's going off as like a minus 250 favorite, right?
Yeah, I saw it this morning as minus 240. Wouldn't surprise me if it's minus 250. And man, let's look at this woman, Holly Holm. I mean, I would consider Holly Holm a pioneer of women's mixed martial arts. I mean, she's just been in the game forever. She has fought the best of the best. I mean, when you're talking about pure experience of talent of the opponent, Holly Holm is the undisputed number one. I mean, she has just fought some absolute dogs. Of course, the revolutionary fight of her knocking out Ronda Rousey is probably one of the biggest upsets in, UFC championship history. If I'm not mistaken.
Beat the crap out of her. And the fashion that she was able to do that was just incredible. But, we have a lady in Vieira who, she brings that Brazilian style. I actually rewatched the Vieira-Miesha Tate fight this morning. And, Vieira, she doesn't really impress me a ton. She, of course she comes from Brazil, but she doesn't really bring that true electricity, high volume. It's more looking for that power shot, that 1-2, that 1-2-3, kind of loopy. Like she doesn't really, move around and, strike. I mean, she's just very kind of unorthodox-ish. And, we could see Holly Holm dominant here. I mean, the line is minus 240. But then again, I mean, Holly Holm is 40 years old? So yeah, 2-year layoff.
Yeah, 2-year layoff. So, Vieira is going to have a 10-year age, I guess. I don't know if it's a disadvantage, but it's probably more of an advantage per se.
Yeah, I mean, historically speaking, from a betting perspective, that big of an age gap is typically an advantage for the younger fighter, especially when the older fighter is in their 40s.
Right, and Vieira, I mean, she's 6-2 in the UFC. So she puts up wins. She's got a great record. This
Bad
kind
losses,
of what's that?
Bad losses.
Bad losses. That's right. Yeah, very bad losses versus competition. That's obviously not the best, but hey, she did beat Miesha Tate by unanimous, which is impressive in her last round. Now, mind you, that was the main event of a fight night. So she already has that 5-round experience, kind of being on that big show. And, I think she'll be ready. I think with that Miesha Tate fight, it'll definitely make her a better fighter coming out here. I think we'll see the best version of Vieira, where Holly Holm at 40, at a minus 250 favorite. God, I would feel really at ease, uneasy putting some juice on that.
Yeah, it's just one of those fights you don't really know which fighter is going to show up, right? Because like we just mentioned, 2-year layoff, 40 years of age, and we don't know how that's really going to affect Holly Holm in this fight. I mean, in normal circumstances, yeah, minus 240, minus 250 seems like good value, right? With Holly Holm against Ketlen Vieira, who just 2 fights ago lost to Yana Kunitskaya, right? So when we're peeling back the onion on that, you're like, okay, something's going on here. And then, like you mentioned, she did beat Miesha Tate very dominantly. We have to mention that. It was a very easy win for her. She cruised to a victory. I think since then, Miesha Tate has moved down a weight class, if I'm not wrong. And but that's a similar situation, though, because Miesha Tate came off a long layoff herself. She's up there in age. She's one of those women that, grew up with Holly Holm in the sport. I think she actually holds a win over Holly Holm, right?
Is that Miesha Tate?
Yeah, Miesha Tate.
I believe so. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like it's one of those things you really don't know what fighter is going to show up. Going to have to do some more capping on this one before I give an honest answer. Try to peek around, see what kind of inside info I could get on Holly Holm's training camp, see how she's looked. Talk to people who are close to her circle and have that information, right?
Yeah, no, and there's no doubt that Holly Holm is going to have a significant experience edge here. I just want to read off some records. So her MMA record is 14-5, right? Her boxing record is 33-2-3, and Holly Holm's kickboxing record is 14-1-7. So she's had over 70 plus, fights, whether that's boxing, kickboxing, or mixed martial arts. I mean, she's just so intelligent, and it'll be interesting to see how she maneuvers this fight. If she's going to want to take this to the ground, probably not. She's probably going to want to stand and bang with Vieira, but mind you, Vieira, she's got bombs. I mean, at 40 years old, although Holly Holm is super tough, I mean, oh gosh, I just feel like, 1-2 punch, boom. I mean, that could really wobble her here. And at -240, at 40 years old, I mean, I don't know really what's left for her. I mean, mind you, she's number 2 in the division. Fiera's number 5. So, both ladies are knocking on the door of a title shot, but it's tough to cap this one at these odds.
Yeah, it's also tough to stomach those odds, right? Because you want to say Vietta's good value there, but until I look further in, I can't really give an honest answer. I'll kind of just be pulling stuff out of my butt here. Yeah. But I do want to touch on this co-main event, which, talking about bangers, Kev, this fight is going to be absolutely fantastic. It's going to be fireworks from the get-go. We have Michel Pereira versus Santiago Ponzinio. And I was actually capping this one a little bit earlier. And, Santiago Ponzinio, he is a lot of finishes on his record of late since he had that. I believe it was knee surgery. He slowed down a little bit in his performances. Really only offers 1-2 combos straight down the pipe as far as I've seen, with some leg kicks mixed in. Tends to gas later on in rounds and later on in fights. But, we've seen Michel Pereira fault from that same gas tank issue. But he has been training at the UFC PI for the last 1.5, 2 years now. That issue has been somewhat corrected. We saw it in his last fight where he beat Fiallo, right? Boy. So, that's an impressive win. It didn't look impressive, when it first happened, but with the resume that Fiallo's put together recently, that one is that's aged perfectly. And Fiallo was the one gassing in that fight, if you remember correctly. Granted, on short notice, he took that fight. I think it was in a week or 2 weeks, but yeah, I'm excited for this one to be a banger. You never know what Michel Pereira is going to pull out of his bag of tricks. So I have to hear what you have to say about this.
Man, this is just an absolute banger of a fight. Ponzinio, he's no joke, man. I mean, he went on a reign in the UFC, winning 7 straight in the division, where he ended up losing the streak to Li Jingliang. Seems like we bring up that name like every stream somehow.
Yeah, that's 2 in a row now.
He just happens to be connected somewhere, but here he is, man. And, Michel Pereira, dominating Andre Fiallo. I mean, in hindsight, to see what Fiallo has done, of course, he's got a 3rd fight in 2 months in Singapore after coming off 2 straight knockouts. Pereira not only beat him, but lasted all 3 rounds with Fiallo. So, Pereira's got a chin, and he's going to be willing to, push forward here. But, let's not forget, I mean, both of these guys have well over 50% finish rate inside the distance. So, yeah, no, this is going to be fireworks like on July 4th, man. This is going to be an absolute banger. You could even make a slight argument that, making this the main event would be silly. I mean, we all know this fight will probably be more entertaining than the main event. But, as a co-main event, it's really exciting, man. This is going to be just a striking affair, I would imagine. And someone's going out.
I got to say, it is a little bit interesting that they put this fight on a fight night, because these are 2 guys who have been fighting on pay-per-views their last few times out there because, they're fan favorites. The crowd loves them. Yeah. That's the type of fighters they are, right? But, a part of me is like, put them in the smaller cage, let them brawl it out in the small cage. It's almost be one of those where it's the first guy to blink. And, this is a big step up in competition for Michel Pereira, right? I mean, Fiallo, great fighter. From what we've seen so far, right? It's not like he's facing top 10 guys yet, right? And that fight was on short notice for Fiallo versus Pereira. So it's going to be interesting to see him adjust to this level of competition. Ponzinio, a top 15 guy, formerly a top 10 guy. So it's going to be fireworks.
Fireworks, man. And Michel Pereira coming off 4 straight wins. So, he's got a lot of motivation, confidence coming into this one. And if he comes in and knocks out Ponzinio in the 1st or 2nd round, I mean, we could be talking about a potential guy in this division. I mean, legitimately, and it's going to be exciting, going to be fun. But there's a few other little fights here and there that are, worth mentioning. Of course, you don't have, all of these massive names on this card, but like we said, it's going to be entertaining nevertheless. One that I'm strangely looking forward to is the Parker Porter fight versus Almeida. Almeida going up to heavyweight for this fight, originally from light heavyweight, where he's weighing in, I think he last weighed in 203. Where you've got a guy in Porter, he's massive. I mean, he
cuts to make 265.
Yeah, and it's a very strange body composition, because it's not all muscle. There's definitely muscle in there, but 260 pounds versus a guy like this, it'll be fun to watch. I mean, I don't even know what it's going to go down. You know, Parker Porter's at like a +450, dog here, but
he's going up towards 500.
That's crazy.
I'm going to put it out on the stream now. I'm taking Parker Porter.
It's crazy because he has that one punch, man, and it's like,
and he's
and you look back at like a Derek Lewis versus the Curtis Blades fight, right? Derek Lewis coming in like +350. Of course, Blades has the wrestling edge, but when you have a heavyweight with that one punch knockout power and you're giving me over +300 odds, it's worth a sprinkle because you just know it only takes one shot.
Yeah, and what we just saw in this last main event, right? It doesn't even have to be a shot. It's a sport where there's so much randomness, right? There's so much variance going on here that when you get these lines upwards of +500, +600, +700, you're going to make money betting those over time, because like we just saw a few weeks ago with Mike Berry or Dean Berry versus Mike Jackson, right? Or I might be butchering the names here, but you know what I'm talking about here, right?
So. Yeah, I think so.
He went off at +750. He cashed because of it.
Yeah. I'm drawing a blank on what the name is.
It was Dean Berry. I think it was Mike Jackson was the other guy.
Mike Jackson. Yeah, that sounds about right.
And so when you have stuff like that going on, when you just this recently in the last main event, you have Alexander Rakic losing because he took a false step and he tore his ACL, presumably. When you get these type of odds, especially in a heavyweight fight, right? Because at the end of the day, it's a 265-pound man swinging 4-ounce gloves. I don't care how high of a prospect you are. You could get clipped. I mean, we even saw Fiallo get clipped in his fight against Van Camp 2 weeks ago, right? It's just he was lucky enough to survive it, overcome it, and his level of competition was so much lesser than him that he really wasn't fighting smart. He got himself in danger. And, Parker Porter, he's no Chase Sherman. I'll say that.
No, I don't think so. I think this fight will really show if he truly belongs. But yeah, no, I mean, he's got power. There's no doubt about it. And we've seen Parker Porter get clipped and stay on the feet. So, it'll be interesting, man. At +500, I think I might be right there with you, man. I mean, you really have nothing to lose. And I mean, it's not like we're talking about a guy in Almeida who is this massive prospect, this guy who's on a bajillion fight win streak. He's athletic. He's very athletic. But other than that, there's nothing really about him that jumps off the page to me. So it'll be a fun fight. Seeing the light heavyweight going up to heavyweight. It kind of reminds me, there was a fight way back in the day in the UFC. It was like UFC 1 or 2. They literally had like a middleweight coming in versus like a 300-pound like sumo wrestler.
Those days are over, but I guess this is we'll get, right? Maximov on his Dana White Contender Series fight going up to heavyweight.
Right. And I mean, back in the day, I mean, they didn't even wear gloves, right? I mean, didn't they go like bare fist early on?
It was like primal days back then. But I just want to touch on this. Jailton Almeida is still a young guy, unproven in the UFC for the most part. And Parker Porter, he's on a 3-fight win streak in the heavyweight division. So something to take note of. I mean, his one loss in his last 5 fights was to Chris Daukaus, who we know is, fights well in the top 15, we'll say, in top 7 or 8. You can't say the same, but Parker Porter's been tested. He's true for the division, the weight division at 260. And you're gonna have someone who's weighing in at 230 tops against him. I'll take those odds.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
Any day of the week.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, now my question: Are you going to be dabbling into just straight money line? Or are you looking for the knockout prop there?
No, I'll take some money line because there is the chance that Parker Porter could just
lays on him,
control him right for 3 rounds, and we don't really know what's going to happen there. Yeah. So when it gets to odds this wide, I'm not going to get greedy. I'll just take him outright. I'll take him straight. Same thing like we did with Alan Nascimento, and that was only +185, right? Yeah. So sometimes it just makes more sense to take the dog outright.
Absolutely. Let me ask you this, Matt. Are you looking forward to any other fights here this upcoming Saturday?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you have Jonathan Martinez versus Vince Morales. That is a banger of a fight right there. Those two can crack. Vince Morales, we just saw him knock out Louis Smolka his last time out. And, Jonathan Martinez, he's fought some tough guys himself. So going to be real interesting to see that go on. And then you have another one between, funny enough, Omar Morales versus Uros Medic, who suffered, I think, his first loss of his career his last time out. So, these are 2 good fights that we can look forward to on this card. There's not many fights next weekend, but those are the ones I'm definitely highlighting.
Yeah, no, the Morales-Martinez fight is going to be fun. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, both guys come from like a Latina heritage, so that they're going to bring that spirit. And yeah, like you said, they just crack, man. They're just gonna put out so much volume, and you know, they'll have a little bit of ground game mixed in there, so it'll be really fun to watch. There is an underdog that number that I'm keeping an eye on. It's in the June Young Park versus Eric Anders. Anders coming in at plus 180. Pretty solid wrestler versus a guy in June Young Park who I haven't really seen much yet. Has a few fights under his belt, but you know, that's definitely one that I'm looking forward to, I guess, in regards to just following that underdog line, seeing if it hits that plus 200. But other than that, man, it's going to be some fun fights, you know, no doubt about it, you know. Yeah. And I don't like the knock of, you know, the UFC putting these, you know, fight cards together, these tomato cans, because at the end of the day, it's entertaining. I mean, if you love the UFC, these are the cards that you just love to see, because this is where you see fighters truly emerge and, you know, put themselves on the map, that they're here to stay.
Yeah, and a lot of people said that about this past weekend's card, right? That it wasn't a great card. It wasn't filled with big names, but look at what it produced. It's always the ones that you don't expect to be good that come out, and they're the ones that get you. And, you know, sometimes I like fight nights better than pay-per-view cards, not just because they're free, because they just put on much better fights. I guess you could say it's because of the small octagon that they're fighting in, but I'm a huge fan.
Absolutely. And, you know, the vibe in the Apex is like no other. Just having that smaller octagon, you know, it's just fun stuff, man. And, you know, we got a lot of big bangers coming up here within the next few weeks. Of course, the card in Singapore, which we just can't wait to see, especially with Yamahovich getting the job done, you know, wanting that rematch versus Glover. It's going to be so fun, man. I'll be honest, and not to get too much on a tangent here, but, you know, I've been so bullish on Yuri, but, you know, just seeing Jan dominate there and calling out Glover, and Glover allowing him to get that rematch, it really makes me want to rethink that fight, because, you know, although Glover Teixeira is, you know, in his 40s, you know, you have no doubt that he's going to just be so technical, so smart in there. And, you know, one small slip up by Jiri, and it's going to end here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're going to have a lot more to say about that card when it rolls around, but I'm right there with you. It is definitely an interesting fight, and now there's another layer added to it from this past weekend's results. So definitely excited for that. Definitely excited about this weekend, you know, as lackluster as the card may seem. But, you know, guys, if you want to hear more, talk more with us this Saturday, 11 a.m., we'll be on Twitter Spaces breaking down the card. As always, follow us on Twitter at Fight Night KOD, and make sure you tune into that Twitter Spaces at 11 a.m. And Kev, you got anything you want to say before we wrap this thing up?
Man, not much, man. I'm just so excited that we're back here every Monday, hopping on these YouTube, Twitch streams, you know, just giving you guys a recap, making it as entertaining as possible. And then on Saturday, you know, we absolutely love just bouncing off those fights again with each other. And then, you know, we always love, you know, when a guest comes on and just says their 2 cents on what they think. So, you know, by all means, if you're looking to contribute, looking to say something, you know, Saturday mornings is the place to be. And, you know, just super excited to get us back in the win column.
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking forward to some more plus money payouts, and stop by Saturday. I'll do some DFS segments too. I know a lot of people are into DFS. They want to learn more. So if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them, whether it's in the Twitter Spaces on Saturday. If you're in the Knights of DGen Discord group, ask away in there. I'd be more than happy. But, you know, that about does it for us here for the UFC Vegas 54 post show. And guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I cannot wait to cap this card and get into it on Saturday with my boy KevDog. Thank you guys for everything. Fight night, we are out.